Good morning, everyone. So I think we'll just get started because it is a little bit after, quite a bit after 11. So hopefully we'll get some more people joining us. But thank you so much to the couple of people that have joined us this morning for this webinar on animating the message, the use of animation in public health advocacy. So my name is Begho. I am the program director here at Lake Health and Wellbeing, and it's really a pleasure to welcome you. So, as we know, digital advocacy plays a really important role when it comes to advocating for the actions that we need in terms of improving the public's health. So today we're going to be focusing on animation as a digital advocacy tool and see how animation has been used in a number of campaigns to improve public health. So we'll be exploring through our speakers, we'll be exploring how they've used animation in non-communicable disease advocacy. We'll be talking a little bit about the process of developing an animation for digital advocacy and the pros and cons of animating public health messages. So we hope that you enjoyed today's session, and thank you so much for joining us and joining us early as well. So our plan for today is that we are going to start off with a presentation from Jill Greenberg. She's a digital media consultant with the Global Health Advocacy Incubator. Jill couldn't actually join us live, so she's sent a recording of her presentation. So she's going to be talking about digital advocacy, setting the context. What is digital advocacy? Just to set the scene for today. Then we'll hear from Damien Pinder, who's the CEO and co-founder of New Visual Media. And Damien will be taking us through the planning and preparation for animation and talking us through some of the work that he's been doing around animation and non-communicable disease advocacy. We'll then hear from Tamara Marie, the communications consultant at the St. Lucia Cancer Society. And Tamara will talk to us a little bit about the public health impacts of their front of package warning label animation. And then I'm going to talk to you about our experience of using animation in sugar sweetened beverage policy advocacy and focusing a little bit on the NGO considerations. And then after that, we'll have a Q&A, and then we will wrap up and close. So just to say that, we have put everybody on mute and videos off just to prevent any disruptions during the presentations. But during the Q&A session, you can raise your hand if you have any questions, and then I can unmute you so that you can speak up if you would like to, or you can ask your question in the chat box. So without further ado, I am going to basically share the introduction to digital advocacy, which was prepared by Jill Greenberg. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and share this. So before I actually play the video of Jill's presentation, I just want to tell you a little bit about Jill. So let me just share that first. So Jill Greenberg has over 20 years of strategic communications experience in Washington, D.C. and globally. Her expertise lies in telling the success stories of complex organizations using traditional and digital media. Jill develops and executes comprehensive communication strategies targeting media, government, opinion leaders, as well as public audiences. She has worked on complex policy issues, including foreign aid, climate change, tax policy, and health policy. Because of her diversity of experience, she has a broad perspective on global and multicultural communications and marketing. So
I'm sorry I can't be here with you today, but I've made a short video to talk to you a little bit about digital advocacy, what it is, and how it can work in what you do. So the purpose of our training today, we're really going to focus on two things. We're going to focus on understanding the difference between awareness and action, and then understanding the components of digital advocacy. So a great place to start is what in fact is digital advocacy. And the way that we define it is the use of online and mobile tools to engage a target audience, inspire them to take action, and wield power to achieve a specific policy goal. And I think what's really important here is about taking action and having that action focus on a goal. So when we look at driving action, it's really, really important to remember that we first sort of got to start with awareness, right? So we're really trying to market to people to get them to understand core facts and issues. So please drink more water, sugary drinks are bad for you. This is really marketing. And then as you sort of build up, you start connecting it to something more urgent. This is content that demonstrates immediate need for systematic action and change to address a public health crisis. So childhood obesity, NCDs have become a crisis in our country. We need to reduce consumption, right? These are all marketing. Advocacy is where you get into the action and things get hot. You see it goes up to 10 right here. And what you've got here is driving advocacy. And this is demonstrating support or pressure for specific policy action to solve urgent issue crisis, right? This is the crisis. This is a petition signed by thousands of people showing strong demand for Parliament to pass a tax delivered to a decision maker. That's really where digital advocacy takes place. It's very important to start with marketing and building awareness, but eventually you've got to drive people to action through specific kinds of actions. What I will also say is that the thing about digital is that it's one key to a great campaign. What we've got here, there's sort of building blocks that all sort of work together. You've got goals that are time-bound, achievable, relevant, measurable, clear engagement opportunity with a strategic target audience, integration with other efforts and resources to execute consistently. So as you can see here, you have all the pieces together. Digital has to work with traditional communications. It's got to work with legal and lobbying. It's got to work with organizing. It all has to be unified. What's really, really important here is that, social media sometimes can be seen as something that can solve all of your problems. And what I would always say is that you can't win based just on social media, but you won't win without it. It's a very, very important component of all of these are important, but it's one very important component in a complete and unified strategy. So let's talk a little bit about how you sort of build a campaign on social media. And the way that we look at it is that there are 4 buckets of types of content, and we're going to talk about them. But let me go through this quickly. Here in the middle, you've got a policy outcome. And then I'm going to start at the bottom because it's so, that's the easiest place to start with the grassroots, public awareness. We've already talked a little bit about that. And public action. Both of these things are really important, and these are because grassroots is large groups of people in the public space. This is helping them understand about something and then driving them to do something. Grass tops, these are people who are more opinion leader types. You've got here key opinion leaders and decision makers, and also traditional media. Traditional media directly communicate with those decision makers. And all 4 of these buckets impact the policy outcome. So we're going to start with public awareness, which I mentioned a little bit beforehand. And public awareness is exactly what you think it is. It's about driving people to understand that there's a problem. So here's some really, really good examples of building grassroots awareness. Here you go on the left-hand side. This is from our partners in South Africa, where there was a successful effort to pass sugary drinks tax. So this is about, do you know how much sugar is in your favorite drink? Check this out. This is like showing people, people are shocked when they find out how much sugar is in a Coca-Cola. This is showing people that. Here's another example in the middle, which is about how sugary drinks play a major role in obesity and as well as diabetes, hypertension, stroke, and cancer. So this tells people, look, one of these increases likelihood of being overweight. Here on the right, this is a really good one too. This is from Brazil, our colleagues Asate, and what they're doing here is that this says, if it's bad for your health, there must be more tax, and that's what the headline is here. And then the post is 1.8 million Brazilians are sick because of the consumption of soft drinks and little juice boxes. It's a lot of people. And it basically is showing people, again, not just the amount of sugar in the drink, but the cost of this, because we do know there's significant cost related to health. And this is really, these are important in terms of defining the problem for people, because people don't necessarily know there's a problem until you tell them. Then what we've got to do is, again, thinking back to that spectrum, is really about driving action. And action can take a lot of different forms. And here's some examples of some good public actions. Here on the left-hand side, you have a petition that was done in South Africa to send the parliament a message that you support a strong sugary drinks tax. This petition was eventually delivered at a very critical moment in the campaign to the decision makers, and really sort of helped push this over the edge and get the parliament to act. So this was a really important signal, a public action that really had an impact. The next one here in the middle is from our colleagues in Colombia, and this is to participate in sending a tweet to show support for the junk food law, so the labeling law, for senators to support it, for the commission to support it. So basically, it's like you can click here and do that. You can watch the debate and participate in the chat on YouTube when they're having the actual debate. You can share a video. These are all kinds of actions that demonstrate that support publicly. And then, of course, there's the good old-fashioned protest outside the parliament. This is an example in South Africa where they had a protest going, holding up signs, and they made a strong demonstration of public support. What's really cool here is that it wasn't just the event happening in front of the parliament, they also had it on Twitter and on Facebook, and they really optimized what was happening that day. Then we've got grass tops, so let's talk a little bit about that. First, we're going to talk about decision makers and key opinion leaders. And here's a great example of a key opinion leader. This is Jamie Oliver. You guys are probably familiar with him. He's a very well-known chef in the UK, but he's global at this point. He's not just in the UK. And here he is pushing support for the petition and for the sugary drinks tax in South Africa. And he's got a link to the petition, and he posted this, and as you can see, it got a lot of engagement and action. And what's really important here is that these type of people, key opinion leaders, can influence secondary audiences. So they can influence people. They can influence the population of people who have, through large followings. They can also influence decision makers in a direct way, because a lot of people maybe know who Jamie Oliver is, and maybe Jamie Oliver can open a door that other people cannot. And so I think what's really important when you think about key opinion leaders and how you leverage them from a content perspective is that they either have a direct line to decision makers, or they can activate a lot of people. And that's what's really, really important about these type of individuals. So the other way to get at decision makers is to directly get at them, right? So this really is limited to decision makers who are active on social media. You can try being positive or negative. You can try images and quotes. You can do ads directed at them, call them out on social media. Use some of this to drive media coverage. These are some examples here. So on the far left here in Spanish, a member of the Congress is tagging the president to ask him to sign the junk food law. So there's a really good example, I think, and it got a lot of 250 likes and 63 retweets. It had some good engagement. Up here on the top, you have a tweet from a political party in South Africa where they say that they're going to vote to pass this law. And our colleagues in South Africa, they shared this tweet and said, hey, this party's committed to doing this. What about you? And they tagged the leaders of the other parties as a way to try to get them to engage. So that's another really cool way to kind of influence decision makers in a direct way. And here's another one. This one is from Barbados, and this is our colleagues that work, our young people who are amazing in Barbados. And what they did was they had a World Health Day of action last year, and they all, probably about 30 of them, posted this frame and their picture wearing these shirts that say "We deserve better," and you can see that they've tagged a lot of the decision makers from Barbados, and including one actually responded. And so the idea here is to draw these decision makers through direct action to get their attention, right? This is directly engaging them. And then let's talk briefly about traditional media, because obviously we know that those decision makers spend a lot of time looking at traditional media. And so it's really, really important to make sure that we're optimizing that content and using social media as a way to engage with Grasstop's media. So packaging stories supported by social media for earned media. Think about how when you're putting a story out to the media, how are you going to put it out on digital as well? You can have people, telling their stories, any new developments, data and report. Think about, because, the digital environment is a little bit different. People's attention spans are much shorter. There's always an opportunity to see somebody's dog or kid, which is much more interesting than this stuff sometimes. So you've got to be really smart about how you're putting it out there. Other thing that's really important is that we know that journalists spend a lot of time on social media, so you should take advantage of that, and you should make sure that if you're having an event, you've prepared stuff in advance, particularly for social media. Maybe you're engaging directly with the journalists, inviting them to a webinar or an event, and then also it's another really, really important thing is to repost favorable coverage and ask people to share it. Here you go. That's an example on the right. At the end of the day, we know that journalists live and die by those clicks. And so if we can, get them clicks, it's very important that they know that, we're out there sharing their stories, and they're much more likely to engage with us in the future if we're sort of helping them out. So that's another really, really important component of content related to traditional media. And the one thing I just want to say in general about the earned media is what makes earned media so important is that we know decision makers pay attention to what's being discussed there and can catalyze efforts. At the end of the day, getting the attention of journalists and having them cover your campaign can somehow directly bring your message to decision makers. Digital and earned media should work hand in hand, as I always say. One should not work without the other. And working together, they can both be even more impactful. So thank you for your time today. And I'm sorry that I wasn't able to attend in person. I'm sorry, I have a little bit of a raspy voice, but I hope this information was useful for you, and I hope you have a great rest of your session. Thank you.
Great. So that was a short introduction into digital advocacy, because we're going to be looking at animation as a digital advocacy tool. So I really hope that that kind of set the scene for the presentations that we have to follow. So I'm now going to move on to our second speaker, and that is Damien Pinder. So Damien is the CEO and co-founder of New Visual Media and New Visual Rentals. So at New Visual Media, Damien manages a team of communications and creative arts professionals in Barbados and Jamaica with wide-ranging expertise, offering services in video production, graphic design, animation, communications consultations, and more that strategically support regional and international NGOs. From consultations on national development communication strategies for St. Lucia's national ocean policy to the creation of multimedia brand guides inclusive of video production and animation of both national and regional technical manuals for training and education, Damien has managed it all. Damien is a former award-winning journalist, having won the Jennifer Jones Award for Excellence in Health Journalism for Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean. As a former 3 consecutive term president of the Barbados Film and Video Association, Damien is also an award-winning filmmaker whose endeavors have seen his films screened at festivals across the world in Haiti, St. Lucia, Italy, Spain, Austria, Canada, just to name a few. His ethos and approach to business can be seen through his company's core values of empathy, efficiency, and effectiveness. He continues to help clients authentically capture the impact of their work across multiple mediums, including animation, so those stories and messages can be shared with the intended audiences to achieve successful desired outcomes. So over to you, Damien. Damien is going to cover some of the aspects of creating animation, so things like planning and preparation, and also share his experience with working on animation for NCD Advocacy. So over to you, Damien.
Hi, good morning, or afternoon or night, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you for that introduction, Abby. So basically the topics that I will be speaking on in brief would essentially be the planning and preparation component of animation. This is beneficial in many ways, very important because it will save you money in the long run, because animation is not as easy as Oh, okay. So I don't like how that word was said or what he did there with his hands. So could you try it a different way? With video, you can do that. If someone does this, you can tell them do it a different way. With animation, that means resketching, redeveloping that specific design, illustrating it over again, and then animating. So I think that the misconception that a lot of persons who don't are not in the space, they think that the movement just happens, but there's the animation element is the last, well, second last, because you want to do song design after, but it's way down the process. There's a whole process that needs to occur to have that effective animation at the end of it. Because at the end of the day, the important thing, especially in the public health advocacy space, is to ensure that having a pretty animation is fine, but the important thing is that it's impactful. So pretty but impactful. So all these things, the planning and preparing aspect is super important. Then I can touch briefly on the developing the concept and the story for the animation. Then the benefits and drawbacks of using animation, there are benefits and there are pros and cons for anything, and animation does not escape that situation. And then the final thing would be providing some tips on developing an effective animation, and this would be more from the perspective of what essentially how you can keep persons who are doing the animation for you to task, so that you know what to make their lives easier, which essentially makes the process a lot more enjoyable, and then you get you get to the point a lot quicker. Okay, so what I am going to start, let me see if I can share my screen here. Share screen. Okay, so we're going to start with the fun part, which is basically let's watch one or two animations, and then we can start the discussion point from there. So we will start with let's start with the animation that is just with speaking. So basically, because there's different types of animation, the one I'm going to show now is one where you would be able to hear hear and see the person speaking. So let me just share that screen instead.
What are you eating that for lunch? I bet it don't taste good. Does anyone know the answer to this question? Oh, I know that one. Pick me. I can't remember the answer to that. Oh, does he know? Wait a minute. Oh, he got so much.
Right.
Not seeing the animation.
You're not seeing it?
Just seeing Healthy Caribbean Coalition.
Oh, okay. Let me try that again. Share. What about now?
Perfect.
Okay, I shared the wrong window. Apologies.
What are you eating that for lunch? I bet it don't taste good. Does anyone know the answer to this question? Oh, I know that one. Pick me. I can't remember the answer to that. Oh, does he know? Wait a minute. Oh, he got so much energy.
Okay, so that was one example, and then we're gonna jump right into the other, which would be this one. So this one would be an example of having animation with more captions as opposed to persons actually speaking, because this would have happened during the height of the pandemic. So we were unable to get voice actors in, but you know, the important thing is getting the message out there. We couldn't wait till things open back. So pretty much that's why we would have went with this approach. And just confirm for me that you're seeing that and hearing that.
Yeah, we can hear, and we can see, like, at the moment, a white screen.
Okay, all right, cool. Alrighty, stop sharing the screen. Okay, so those are essentially two examples of two types of animations. There's some where you can interperse actual person speaking with the animation as well. So there are a number of different ways that you can actually go about that process. The first way would be, the first thing that has to go in this process is actually the development of the animation. So that's where the planning and preparing for the animation comes in. So I can't stress enough how important this aspect of the process is, because you don't want to not be effective here at the beginning, because then you can run into a lot of problems, budget problems, missing timeline problems, the message not being as effective as you would have liked. That's extremely important. So what I usually do in my approach to the planning and preparing for the animation is what I think everyone should do. Start at the end. The end is the most important thing, isn't it? So in your planning and preparation, the thing that starts at the beginning, you need to start at the end. So the questions that need to be asked is not like, okay, so what colors are you thinking about? Okay, what do you want, a 2D animation, 3D animation? Those things are not really important at that stage. The important thing to get discussing with whoever is doing the animation is to make sure that they understand clearly what the aim is, what the goal is of the animation, whether it is to kind of show children that, you know, you can still be healthy, smart, and cool if you choose water over sugar sweetened beverages, if you choose fruit over snacks that are loaded with a lot of sugar. And it kind of empowers the younger persons as well to you know, because there's some young children out there that put pressure on their parents, like, why are you eating that? You know, that kind of thing. And this is as a result of the many the messages that are out there that persons would see, and they'll be exposed to this healthier alternative. And it clearly has been impact, at least from an anecdotal perspective with my younger cousins and stuff like that. I can definitely see a change in their approach. I mean, they will still eat snacks, but it's not as bad as it definitely was when I was growing up, for sure. So that is as a result of the animations being impactful, because the planning process starts with what is the goal. And that way, what it does, it allows you to not waste time, because you basically balance every decision that's made in the creative process against the impact of what you want at the end. So without that discussion in the beginning, there's a lot of decisions that you can make, because the field is so vast and so wide for the amount of things, the amount of options that you can utilize. Because the great thing about animation is that there's no limit. Do you want a rocket fly into space? Then, okay, cool, that can happen. But is that rocket fly into space important? Is it important to take time doing that, or is it more important to take time doing something else? So that discussion is extremely important to have at the beginning, and then also to ground you in every single decision that you make going through the process. Because it's not, we have to be real. It's not about us or who's animating it. And in most cases, and in cases too, it's also not even about you, the client, who would hire the person to do it. It's about the people that you guys are trying to help. And that way you can kind of take, so it's difficult because we are human, we are biased, even if we don't realize it in our decisions. So having that discussion, and you got that, just every time you're going to have a meeting about this thing, just go back to that note of this is the impact. Have that actually really grounds you. And I find it's extremely important, because then you can focus on what is the goal, who am I trying to help, how am I trying to help them, what do I need them to do to help themselves? Because that's I think something that we often forget. They have to make the decision to help themselves, because we can't force water down their throats instead of sugar sweetened beverages. We can't force them to get out there and start to be more active. So is whatever, how can we craft this message to make it a driver for change in terms of their lifestyles? And remember that it's within 30 seconds, we have to tell them, you have to undo the decade of damage that you've been doing to your body. That's not an easy task, but at least once you are real and you have that grounded, then it makes it a lot easier to be able to achieve that. So yeah, I can't stress enough how important the planning and preparation component of animation is. So moving on. The preparation part. This is the least fun part of the process. It entails the getting understanding. So you get from the planning element and thinking about the end is about getting that clarity now, because remember, you know what you have in your head, you have your vision. Technology hasn't gotten to the point where we can telepathically transmit that via Bluetooth or Wi-Fi as yet, from one brain to the next. So the level of how you describe things is extremely important, and making that clear so that then it is a bit more clear to our perception of what you are trying to describe. And then the sketching process starts because it's all about interpretation. That's the unfortunate thing about animation. It's all about interpretation until it's done. With a live action film, you see it. Okay, I don't like that. Okay, I like that. With animation, unfortunately, the work has to be done first for you to really be able to be like, okay, I think this is exactly what I wanted, or this is it. So it's important to not so that you don't kind of slow the process, to have that clarity in your vision as well in terms of the look and everything. And again, going back to the grounding component and ensuring that there's that grounding there as well. So that is extremely important. So this would lead us now into the developing the concept and storyline for an animation. So again, everything that I speak about today will factor in the end. It has to factor in the end. And you guys will probably get tired of me saying that by the end of this presentation, but I just want to drive home how important it is. So developing the concept and the storyline, again, there's a need for that clarity so that as you go through the process, you're in line at every stage with what needs to happen. So once you have everything scripted, so you determine whether you would have the animation as just a complete animation with music, so no one is actually audibly speaking. You got some sound effects. You are going to you add the music, and then you have just captions. Some other animations, the concept and the style of that animation could be where you actually get voice actors in and you get persons to voice the actions. But these decisions are directly tied to budget. You know, as I always tell people, in the Caribbean or in the world, but in the Caribbean, there's no limit to our talent, but there's limit to budgets. So what's going to win out every time? The limitation of the budget, of course, because there's no limit to the talents. So all of these things have to be within the limitation of the budget. So that's the important discussion to have up top as well. Because I know sometimes when I am on the end where I'm hiring someone like to do something at the house or whatever service provider, sometimes when they ask for a budget, it's like, just tell me how much it costs. I feel like if I tell you $1 million and you know it can cost $1,000, you can be like, yeah, you could do it for $1 million. But with animation, it's extremely important to have that discussion up front because, as I said, there's so much scope in terms of what can be done in the development of the concept and the storyline, because there are different types of approaches to the animation. So yeah, so then there's the other way is the mixture of live action with animation. And this is actually my favorite way of approaching things because what it does, it maximizes the benefits that both of them have, which I will get to for the benefits and the pros and cons of animation a little further down the presentation, but it actually maximizes those two things. So what I will do now is I will show you one where we would have done that utilizing a presenter. What it did is it meant that for this specific one, it was difficult to find impactful, conceptualize impactful ways to animate that component, the introduction, which was not the most important part. So for the more complex stuff, then we're able to utilize the animation. So I will just show you that now.
Across Caribbean public services, there is great demand for transformational leadership to create an environment that fosters innovation in public service delivery. But how do you know if your organization has this enabling environment? Grounded in research, the Caribbean Leadership Project has developed an enabling environment assessment. This provides a wide range of strategies and actions to help take public sector organizations and regional institutions to a higher level in enabling transformational leaders. To find out how you can use this assessment to foster and inspire purpose-driven leadership, to build leadership capacity for action, encourage collaboration, and support the achievement of results, visit us at www.clptoolkit.org and contact us at info@caribbeanleadership.org. Let us help your organization learn, network, succeed.
Right. So yeah, so that was one, as I said, where you're mixing the two. So I kind of like that because you just play up the benefits of both of them. And again, that's that you can make those decisions once you know what's the impact at the end, and then you know, okay, all right, so the impact is still covered if you do it this way, and it helps ease on the budget, because sometimes there's certain things that need to be said in order to connect things. Hi, I'm from this, and this is the what have you, et cetera, et cetera. But those aren't particularly complex messages. So to spend budget and time to have those things developed, sometimes it's easier to just have a presenter come in where you can actually see them on screen. Because remember, if we just did a voiceover for that, it would be a lot more animated that would not necessarily add to the impact of the video. So there's always about the impact, and the efficiency as well has to be considered. So in a nutshell, developing the concept and the storyline, the problem that you're trying to solve, as I said, is the most important. The length as well. So those considerations will be made primarily based on the exhibition space as well as budget. So are you doing it on social media where people have a 0.5 of a second attention span? Then nobody's going to sit down and watch your 2-minute, 3-minute, 4-minute animation. As much as you may have the budget to do it, as much as you think all the information in there is important, it might not work out the way you expect it to. Because so you have to consider those things. With television, I find that you can probably push a little longer in terms of a commercial. So I would more recommend 30-second social media animation as opposed to a minute. While on television, a minute is fine, because if someone is watching the program, they want to see the program. So there's a commercial break, so they'll wait to see the program. On social media, there's no waiting. There is, okay, 5 seconds, okay, cool, well, not interested, bam. And you can go on to something else. So there's a lot of macro and micro considerations that are made as you go through the development of the concept and the storyline. So just a brief bit on the storyline before we move on. The storyline, like everything, like any book, like any film, animation, same thing. It must have a beginning, a middle, and an end. If it's just info, then the person can read a newspaper. It needs to be engaging. So the same way someone would sit and read a book of many pages is because the author develops it in such a way that it taps into that emotion, so that you feel connected to the character, and then you want to make sure that this character survives by the end of the book, or this character is able to achieve the goal that they set out because you are their biggest supporter. So the same thing with animation. You want persons to identify with the characters. You want persons to identify with the story. And that way, when persons do that, then they identify with the message. And there's no action without that identification with the message. Because if you don't identify with the message, what are you actioning? You don't know. Like, so that's extremely important. The storyline, ensuring that it connects, because the important thing is to connect on that emotional level, that's extremely important. And I know it kind of always downplay the quality element, but I guess because if you're hiring someone to be an animator, this should be good. Just like if I go to a restaurant, I expect the food to be good. The decor and the customer service and all these different things are their add-ons, their pluses, but the food, you expect the food to be good. Definitely, you could just stay home and cook. So the same thing with if you're hiring an animator, the bare minimum must be that they will produce quality work. So it's everything else now that you need to keep the task and have those discussions with to ensure that at the end of the day, it achieves the goals that you want it to achieve. Okay, so now we're moving on to the benefits and drawbacks of using animation. So just check my notes here. So the drawbacks. Animation can be costly. It can also be cheap because thanks to Fiverr, and sites like that, and thanks to industrialization in countries like India, for instance, that kind of made it a lot easier for persons in terms of service providers now to also be able to do stuff a lot cheaper, because the cost of living is not expensive, the cost of labor is not expensive, and we probably won't get into labor laws and rights and all that stuff. But there are cheap ways to do it. The quality control can sometimes be an issue because they're essentially mass producing, just in the same way they're manufacturing, where they're mass producing and doing things quickly. They're mass produced, but I'm just saying that to say that there are options out there to get it done cheaply. I'm speaking about it from a Caribbean perspective. So that's one drawback. It's expensive and time-consuming process. It doesn't just happen. Everything has to be done. It has to be sketched, designed, illustrated, animated. The audio has to be done as well, and everything packaged into one thing. So to give you an example of the complexities of animation in terms of the time it takes to do it. If you're doing a video and I'm about to present and I am to say the title of the slide. So the benefits and drawbacks of using animation. Wow, okay, that was quick. That's 5 seconds. Okay, cool. Drop down the timeline, put it into the video. I'm not simplifying for us videographers the process, but I'm just saying. So that's 5 seconds. For animation, that could take a day because you have to sketch it first. You have to ensure, and each of these steps, there has to be an approval process, again, so that you don't get too far deep onto another process and then there's a change, because it's not as easy to make the changes with animation. So if I had to get a character to say that same thing, the benefits and drawbacks of using animation, that takes 5 seconds to say as live action. With animation, the process is a lot longer because, as I said, you gotta sketch it, then you have to actually design it. So draw it, design it, make sure that everything is right, because you see the background that's behind me, that has to be drawn in, how the light hits the different things, that has to be created, because it's not a real world, it's literally a blank slate. With live action, we start with something. So even if we shoot in a blank space, there's something in that blank space behind us. There's trees or there's a wall or something. With animation, you literally start with nothing. So you have to be an artist first. So the different steps in the phases, you have to conceptualize it. Then you have to be an artist. So it has to be drawn. And after it's drawn, you become an illustrator. It has to be illustrated. So illustration is giving it color, giving it texture, shadows, lighting, and how all these reflect within the look of the animation. Then after that, then you have to animate it. So the mouth has to line up. with the audio recording, which has to be done before. The facial expression, if the person have these forehead wrinkles like me, and you want to make it realistic, you gotta animate those as the person speaks. There's so many different things. If they move and it's light here and they're outside, you gotta make it more realistic. You gotta put some movement even in the hair, in the clothes. So it could become very, very, very costly. It could become very, very, very time consuming. However, there are benefits to it, of course. So one of the benefits of animation, the biggest one, is that you can bring any idea to life. So anything that you can conceptualize, you can animate it. Again, there's always the budgetary scope limitation. That is a real thing. But if there's not that, then basically any idea that you can think about, you can bring to life through animation. So therefore, in that sense, then it can be cheaper than doing certain things live action. It allows you to also simplify complex messages. So when there's a lot of things like stuff that includes a lot of data, then you can easily basically make those messages a lot more palatable to the viewer. And the last thing would be in terms of, and this is going into a bit of basically marketing data and sales data actually. I would have seen that basically a study show that using videos on like your website, for instance, on the landing pages, that it would increase conversions by 86%. And animation turns out is the most effective at that. In public health, your conversion saves lives. So that is, I guess I need to say I don't need to say anymore. Your conversion isn't a sale. Your conversion is this person has decided to make a lifestyle change, and it compounds, because if they decide to make a lifestyle change, you've potentially saved their lives, and they then become a walking example of that change, and then others now see them. So it means that that one change can then become 5 or even 20, because it could become generational. So even thinking all the way down the lane, it can become generational, where now they've stopped the generational curse of obesity and chronic diseases, and they teach their children the right way to do things, and then their children teach their children the right way to do things. You may got a few that stray, always is in the families, but you know, I say that to say a bit of romanticization of it, but I say that to say that the impacts of and the benefits of animation are they go further than just the looks and beauty of the animation. They're extremely useful to drive persons to change, and we're not in the times anymore where persons, when they, I mean, there are few people still, but they're not in times anymore where most people saw animation as stuff for children. And the pandemic would have seen a drastic increase in animation, because messages still had to get out, but persons couldn't get out to be able to shoot stuff or record the audio. So the animation became, you saw a great increase in animation there. So lastly, tips on developing an effective animation. As I said, let's keep it very simple. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's about the people that you and I, or whoever you utilize to do your animations, are trying to help. And the greatest tip is to never lose focus of that, because I mean, I could sit here and tell you about all the different creative things and all these different processes and stuff like that. But once you keep in mind, it's not about either of us, but it's about the persons who we're trying to help, that dictates everything. That dictates every decision, that dictates every creative decision, because now you're balancing all your decisions to, does it achieve what I've set out to achieve? So yeah, that's the singular most impactful tip that I can give on ensuring that the development of your animation is effective. Because, you know, yeah, you can go into to a lot of different things, such as just again ensuring that you speak budget up front, so that the animators are aware of the limitations. You want to make sure the story is solid and tight before the process commences. You want to have a process of where you approve at every phase of the development. So all these things, but yeah, I would still say the singular most important thing is never forgetting who you're trying to help and the importance of the work that you guys are doing in the public health space. You're saving lives. Just remember that. You may not be a Superman that flying in with a cape and saving somebody from getting robbed, but the messages that you guys develop are saving people from essentially killing themselves. You know, that's important. So yeah, that is pretty much it for this presentation. So thank you guys so much.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Damien. That was really useful. Thank you for all the practical tips. And I think a message that I am going to leave your presentation or leave here with is the fact that animation really does simplify very complex messages. And when we're in public health, we do have a lot of complex messages that we need to get across, and animation does that. And of course, I like what you said about in public health, our conversion is saving lives. It's not about sales like in other fields, but it's about saving lives. So, so thank you so much for that presentation. It was very, very useful, very informative. So now we're going to move on. So now that we know what digital advocacy is, we've understood a little bit about the planning and preparation and what goes behind some of these animations. We're now going to hear from Tamara Marie, who's going to talk to us a little bit about the experience of the St. Lucia Cancer Society in using animation in their advocacy work. So, so let me just tell you a little bit about Tammy. So Tammy is a healthcare management professional with a keen interest in public health advocacy, born in the Nature Isle of Dominica, but raised in the Helen of the West Indies, St. Lucia. She currently works at Columbia Doctors in New York, but remotely volunteers with the Healthy Caribbean Coalition and the St. Lucia Cancer Society. At the St. Lucia Cancer Society, Tammy supports digital awareness and advocacy efforts around cancer prevention. At the Healthy Caribbean Coalition, she led the conceptualization of a campaign aimed to promote healthy food environments for children and young people, and is part of the coordinating team for the Healthy Caribbean Coalition's youth arm, Healthy Caribbean Youth. So over to Tammy to tell us a little bit about their experience of animation in terms of the front of package warning labels. So over to you, Tammy.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you to you, Abby, Lake Health and Wellbeing, for having me, and to everyone here today. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. So as Abby would have mentioned, I worked with the St. Lucia Cancer Society as a communications consultant. And today is pretty much about sharing my experience of using animation in the advocacy campaign that they had around front of package warning labels last year. So similar to Damien, I'm going to start off by sharing the video. Let's hope this works. Can we see?
Yes, we can see.
Okay,
perfect.
awesome.
Mom, you okay there?
Doc said I need to make better choices to get my high blood pressure under control. He said I need to watch the salt.
I think he meant you need to do things like read the nutrition facts on the back of food packages.
Oh, these labels are so hard to understand. Why can't they be simpler?
They could be, If our leaders adopt the warning labels that are shaped like a stop sign on the front of the food packages.
Wishful thinking, my dear.
No, mommy, it's not. CARICOM leaders are currently voting on whether or not they want to introduce them. These labels will make it easier for mom, you, and even me to tell when packaged foods are high amounts of sugar, fats, and salts.
He's right. Eating too much of sugars, fats, and salts is linked to obesity and non-communicable diseases like heart disease, diabetes, and cancers.
Leading causes of death in the Caribbean.
You know, Mama is not the only one who needs to watch what she eats. Us children are at risk too. We're basically drinking ourselves sick.
Now last Dio, you need to wear glow.
Caribbean leaders can make a real difference.
Now more than ever, we need them to step up.
Now, more than ever, we need better labels so we can make better choices for better health.
This message was brought to you by the St. Lucia Cancer Society in association with the Healthy Caribbean Coalition.
Alrighty. So Damien nicely covered a lot of ground. And so a lot of my presentation somewhat echoes his sentiments. And so why we used animation is linked to a lot of the benefits that he mentioned. For one, you have no real world limitations. You're able to create any scene, any character, any setting. So essentially your imagination can run wild. With animation, there's a level of design control that you pretty much cannot get with live action videos. So like he mentioned, you don't like something, you can change it. You're able to pay closer attention to the details and ensure that the final product is pretty much exactly what you and the team envisioned. And well, lastly, with that flexibility and control, animation really offers, you know, an ability or the opportunity to create videos that appeals to larger groups of people. So you're able to reach across, you know, cultures and different demographics. So I think it's tempting to think that, and I too for some time thought that way, that live action offers a more realistic experience, but I think ultimately it depends on your communication strategy. So jumping ahead for a quick second, I wrote the script, the scenes, and once that was approved by the organization and the partners, I sent it over to Ted Sandiford of Acid Creations, who's an animator that's based in St. Lucia. But how did we come up with that idea, the concept, you know, what did the conceptualization process look like? And a lot of it is related to what Damien mentioned, which I kind of learned the hard way, coming up with something like a creative brief. I don't think there's a one size fits all way to do this, but I think that any outline should address at least the purpose, you know, of the video or the content that you're trying to create, the objectives, as well as the target audience. So in our case, you know, we wanted the public to know about, you know, front of package warning labels and ultimately support its implementation. We wanted them to feel like it would help them make healthy choices easier and to also know that a voting process was going on. And we wanted to target adults, especially parents and caregivers, you know, persons living with NCDs. And well, to do that, we had to consider how they currently think, how they feel, you know, what do they do in relation to the objectives that we had set. And I really think it's important to point out that taking the time to understand your audience, which is a lot of what Damien spoke about, is really, really, really important, because that's the ultimate goal, you know, creating messaging and content that sticks. So the script writing process for every video or every animation is, of course, going to be different. And to be honest, this one in particular happened really quickly because it's essentially a compilation of snippets from actual conversations that I had with family and friends. The whole idea of labels, you know, and is this really possible? Well, yes, because the voting process is going on. That was a new conversation. And so in terms of how that delivery would happen, intergenerational households are common in St. Lucia, across the Caribbean too. Many persons living with NCD struggle to properly manage their conditions, which, as we saw with the grandmother in the beginning, the doctor telling her to watch her salts. And sometimes they don't even understand what that means, Children and young adults nowadays know the most. So we thought that it would be nice to actually have them do a lot of the teaching. And the humor at the beginning, throw it in the French Creole, which is a second language in St. Lucia. That was done in an attempt to keep things interesting, to make the video a little more engaging, and it worked. So it was well received. It gained quite a bit of traction. It was aired on one of the television broadcasting stations for the duration of the campaign, or not even the duration of the campaign, but up until voting was actually completed across the CARICOM. The Ministry of Health endorsed the campaign. They reposted it. They reposted this video on their socials. So did the government of St. Lucia. They even linked it to one of their online press releases about food warning labels, and the voting process being underway. So all of this to say that I would 100% recommend using animation for, advocacy and awareness campaigns. I think that, we play a key role in keeping the audience informed and engaged about health issues. And animation offers a ton of freedom to really shape the tone, the visual style, ultimately the message, you want to convey. Since this video, I worked on a few other videos, and so I kind of compiled what I think is probably most useful when developing content or an animation. And so number one is always develop a creative brief. Use that as an opportunity to be clear about the purpose and the goal of the content. Clarify the message, make sure that it is actually targeting your audience, especially when you're working with multiple organizations. So it's an animation that organizations are collaborating on, plus you're working with a creative agency. That document really puts everyone on the same page. It facilitates clear and thorough communication from the beginning of the process, which again, as Damien mentioned, mitigates a lot of the troubles that can happen later down the line, and it keeps everyone on track. If I got a do-over, I would definitely have that video be shorter. I think it worked because, as Damien again would have mentioned, and I'm referencing a lot of what he said because it was so useful. This kind of had a lot of purposes. It played on TV, so being a little longer than usual wasn't so bad, but it was also on socials as well. So keeping it shorter is something I would have 100% done. And even more importantly, I would keep the message in singular. So it's hard when you're working with a lot of technical information, when you think, oh my gosh, there's so much that we need to relay. What is important? It's really, really, really important to kind of establish, why are we creating this video? And I suppose that has its pros and cons too, because, for example, you can, create shorter videos for social media, shorter videos with one messaging, maybe do an explainer video, which is a little bit longer and has a little bit more detail. So try to really think about, again, going back to the brief, the purpose of the messaging of the video, and try to keep every video with one key message. Reality is our audience has a really limited attention span, and we're fighting for that. Be short, to the point, make sure that the animation conveys the message clearly. Use easy to understand words. Don't assume that everyone knows what you're thinking. And that goes for not only the words used, but also the images as well. Try to keep things as simple as possible. Avoid clutter, because that can actually be a distraction. Again, thinking of your target audience, emphasize what is in it for them. try to communicate a benefit. And even on that note, be consistent. Sometimes if you're creating something that's part of a wider campaign or wider communication strategy, which was the case here, you want to try to repeat messages throughout the material. So, you know, wherever you can, reuse the same words and phrases. So this one, the benefit was kind of something that we repeated a lot throughout. We kind of piggybacked off of HCC's messaging in terms of, you know, the idea here is to make healthy choices easier, to help make healthy choices easier for consumers. People are swayed by both facts and emotions. So you want to cater to both their heart and their head. You want to, you know, use both in order to really maximize the material's persuasiveness, the potential of the video, and include a call to action. So I think this one really varies, you know, especially if you're dealing, and that will depend on if it's an awareness campaign, if you have an actual call that you want, you know, people to do. But wherever possible, try to be really precise about what viewers can do after watching your video. And lastly, I would say, don't be afraid to get creative. I think one of the huge challenges I've encountered is that, you know, we know what we want to convey, and some of it is more technical than others. And again, in trying to simplify things, keep it short, keep it concise, we're always assuming, oh, well, this will go over their heads. Oh, wait, no, they will not get it. And I think animation, like I said, offers an opportunity to get as creative as you would like, and you should leverage that. I think when doing something original, it can get a bit tricky because now you're trying to reach across cultures, across demographics. But, you know, sometimes people want to see other people. Sometimes people want to feel that level of relatableness where, wow, this is happening here too. Yes, it's the same thing going on everywhere. So don't be afraid to, you know, leverage the accents, the common slang, or the things that people use in certain cultures. And when I say certain cultures, I'll be more specific and say in certain islands. I think we all have our different, you know, flavors, and sometimes it's like, okay, well, you don't want to get too specific because people won't get it. But I think you should make those calculated risks wherever possible, and have fun with it. So mine was a lot shorter, but I will say that again, one of the huge things that I've learned is trying to make things as simple as possible for everyone involved. And that goes from the client as well as the creative agency. So thank you again, Abby, for having me. And I think we're gonna have like a question and answer session at the end. So happy to address any of that.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Tammy. That was great. That was really good. And I love that animation. I just find it so impactful. So, and also humorous, and it covers a lot in terms of front of pack. So thank you so much for sharing your experience. So now it's actually my turn. So I'm going to talk to you all about our work around using animation in sugar sweetened beverages advocacy. So let me just get myself organized here so I can just get started. So just bear with me for 2 seconds. All righty. All right, hi everybody. All right, great. So we, over the past year or so, we have been implementing a project that's looking at sugar sweetened beverage advocacy. So this project really is called You're Sweet Enough. So this campaign is called You're Sweet Enough. And the aim of this campaign has been to educate the public on the health impact of the overconsumption of sweetened beverages. And also what we wanted to do was to encourage the public to consume fewer sweetened drinks and to drink mostly water. And then we'll also have a third part of this campaign, which is to advocate for policies and decisions that reduce the public's consumption of sweetened beverages. Now, digital advocacy is a major part of our campaign. campaign. So very core part of it. And we use a range of different digital advocacy tools. So we use our campaign website, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, emails. So we send out a lot of emails about the campaign, WhatsApp, and of course, animation. So as I said, animation is really a core part. We've developed a range of different animations really to try and educate the public around sugar-sweetened beverages. So we've used animation really to educate. We've used animation to stimulate discussion. We've used animation to reach different types of audiences. And we've used animation really to try and improve engagement. But also we've used animation to change hearts and minds. So we have a couple of animations. Our animations have been fairly long, so they've been around about a minute. And we wanted to, and that was a little bit intentional because some of the animations were going to be used on TV as well as social media. So the first animation that we developed was more of a kind of infomercial. It really aimed to provide facts and figures around sugar-sweetened beverages. And it was based on an infographic that was created by the Healthy Caribbean Coalition. So I'll just show you
the dangers of sweet.
A bit, just
It's
to
in
show you
kids
the
and
concept of it.
babies.
Really
50% of adult females and 37% of males are overweight and obese,
the links to sugar-sweetened
exceeding their daily healthy limit.
How much
So, how much sugar should we consume? The World Health Organization and American Heart surprise you how much sugar is in some of your favorite beverages.
In our drink.
This chart shows that on average, one serving of a sugary beverage exceeds the daily maximum sugar intake for children, which is 25 grams, and is very close or sometimes over the limit for adults at 50 grams. The impact of sweet beverages on your health, your family, and community can be severe. So, it's time to rethink your drink.
So that animation, as I
This
said, was
message has
more
been brought
about
to you
facts
by
and
the
figures.
St.
So
Kitts
really
and
just trying to
Nevis
communicate
Ministry
a
of
lot
Health.
of information, but in an engaging way. So the second animation that we developed was called Real Talk Bar, Addicted to My Sweetness. And in this one, we used humor to convey the message of the link between sugar-sweetened beverages and overweight and obesity. So in this animation, really, this is the imagining basically what would happen if Coke and water were having a conversation in a bar. So again, I'm just going to show like a little clip.
Why you see me crying, boy? What me crying? I just see her thinking about that girl. I think she cheating on me, you know. You lie. Boy, for real. A couple of weeks ago, right? She come telling me how I'm too sweet. And that I just make she belly roll and I got her thighs rubbing. What is that?
No, man.
But yes. Look, she tell me, right, that we need some time apart. To be honest, I wasn't too concerned about that because you know how the girls and them, they're addicted to me sweetness. But then I see she the other day and the girl looking so good, looking so fresh and so lean.
Boy, you sure she addicted to you?
But yes. But wait. Look at her. Come, hide. Boy, come hide now. Oh. I can't believe, but is that what going on? Really? Why you got to say for yourself?
Drink some water, share some love. Tell your body you're sweet enough. Drink some water,
Tell somebody you're sweet enough. The harms of sugar-sweetened beverages. We then also produced an animation called Captain Splash, and that aimed to convey messages about the impact of SSBs on children. So in this animation, sorry about that, sorry. So having some internet issues, apologies. So let me get back to sharing, sorry guys. Alrighty, so hopefully I'm not sure where I cut out, but hopefully you didn't miss too much. So then the next animation that we developed was called Meet the Wilberts. And this was really sort of an emotional journey of how SSBs and unhealthy diets affects families. So we added a bit of humor, some sadness, and then at the end, there's a bit of hope in the sense that we can do something about our unhealthy lifestyle. So just again, just to show you, give you a flavor of this animation.
Today, we'll be spending time with the Wilberts. They're a happy family that love liming, and with plenty of food and drink to go around, life is good, but not for long. Sadly, the Wilberts never paid attention to what they ate or drank. And when asked to reduce those sugary drinks, they joked and said, "We will, but not today." Unfortunately, a year later, Mr. Wilbert had a stroke. And a few months after that, Mrs. Wilbert was diagnosed with diabetes. From hospital bills and the cost of drugs to time off work, this began to take its toll on the family. But it wasn't until they saw the effect it was having on their children that they finally decided to make a change. You see, the Wilberts realized their family was already sweet enough, and a healthy lifestyle was the best gift they could ever give them.
Great. So that's that one. And then we had some very short animations to kind of help people visualize how much sugar is in a popular sugar sweetened beverage. So just to quickly just show you, really here, what we're trying to do is really get people to see that there is a lot of sugar in these drinks. And so you can see we sort of use the concept of the teaspoons adding up to try and get that message across. And then we added a bit of sass with the lady putting her hand on her hip as well. So that's that. So that's just to give you a flavor of how we've used animation and the different purposes of each of the different animations that we put together. So from our perspective, the benefits of animation basically reflect what Damien and both Tammy have been saying. So for us, it made the public health message more interesting. So we were able to do a lot of things that we can't do in any other way. It made the message more visual, and therefore it made the message more understandable. So you have these complex messages, we're able to visualize them and make them a lot more understandable. For us, it improved engagement. We see that we received a lot more engagement than when we used sort of static pictures. So it definitely improved engagement. And it allowed us to be really creative. It allowed us to do things that we wouldn't be able to do any other way. So for example, you can have soda and water having a conversation in a bar. We can turn water into a superhero through Captain Splash. So it allowed us to really get creative and really sort of make the campaign a lot more interesting. Another thing was that it removed a known personal identity from the campaign message. And this was kind of important to us because we did a public opinion survey at the beginning of our campaign. And the public said to us that there are certain people that they don't want to hear from when it comes to public health messages. So it sort of removes that identity and address that issue that people have. Maybe they don't trust a particular type of person as well. So it sort of removed that identity. Plus, sometimes when you do use celebrities or some other persons as spokespersons, they may then do something contrary to what your campaign message is, and that can create problems in terms of the validity of your campaign. So by using animation, we can take a known person or a known identity away from that campaign message and make that the message very kind of neutral in terms of the person that's delivering it. And it was fun, you know, it made people laugh. Every time we went into town, somebody had some kind of antidote or some kind of experience with our campaign animations. And that allowed us to kind of start a conversation and raise awareness about particular issues. In terms of the disadvantages of animation, Damien kind of went through these, so I won't go through them in detail, but it can be very expensive. Also very time consuming, and then also finding the expertise in terms of a really good animator can be difficult. But we personally didn't have that problem. I'm going to explain why, but I can see that finding a good animator can really be a challenge sometimes. So in terms of our NGO considerations, so NGOs, we're small, we don't have a lot of resources. So these are some of the kind of things that we were thinking about as we were developing our campaign and thinking about using animation. So the first was the animation expertise. So you might ask, where did we find an animator? So for us, we were actually in a very good position of having an in-house expertise. So our creative director is a software engineer with animation, graphic design, web development experience, and also he's a qualified teacher and IT educational consultant. So he's done a lot of work of using IT in education. That means he has a very unique skill set that you can't really find anywhere, which means he has that technical side, but he also has that educational side. So he's able to actually put messages together in a way that would be very informative. So he has a really good experience. So we were lucky in that we had that in-house expertise. But then you might ask yourself, where can I find an animator? So as Damien alluded to, there are many animators, a lot of really good animators in the region. And so it's just a matter of going out there to look in terms of finding a good animator. So places where you can start, Anime Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago Animation Network, the Jamaican Animation Network, but also local government or cultural and creative organizations can help you identify a good animator. So here in St. Kitts and Nevis, we have the Ministry of Entrepreneurship, Entertainment and Talent Development, and they should be able to help in terms of finding a good animator. Alternatively, you could explore freelance sites like Upfiverr and Upwork to see if you could find a good animator, but it can be very difficult because there's just so many people on these freelance platforms that it can be very hard to sift through them all to find a good animator. So another tip that our creative director told me to tell you all is that you can actually use PowerPoint as an animation tool. And he said to me that you'll be very surprised at the types of animations that you can produce just by using PowerPoint. So if you have somebody in-house who's kind of creative, they can explore using PowerPoint as an animation tool. And that will obviously help in terms of cutting down the cost, but also if you can't find an animator. So in terms of the cost, the consideration around cost, how did we cover the costs of creating all of these animations? So we were very lucky to get a grant from Greenberg Philanthropy. So thank you very much. We're very appreciative. And the grant was quite significant. So it not only funded the cost of creating the animations, like the software, the time of the animator, but it also allowed us to provide, or also provided funding for us to do a lot of the promotion. So we had the animations on TV, social media, so that we could reach a larger audience, and the grant covered all of that cost. So then you might be asking yourselves, where can I get funding in terms of animation? So I think in the Caribbean, we do have a very big challenge in terms of securing grant funding. It can be very challenging because many Caribbean islands are considered middle or high income countries, and therefore we're not eligible for a lot of grants. So it can be difficult to find grant funding, but some places to start. So Creative Caribbean is a recent funding call that has just gone out. There's a deadline for mid-June, and they're looking to support creative projects. So if you have an animation project that you would like to get off the ground, then you could actually apply for this particular grant, and the deadline is mid-June. The Caribbean Development Bank has the Cultural and Creative Industries Innovation Fund, and you can look out for their next grant call, and you can maybe apply for a grant through them to support the work that you're doing. But obviously you can do some general fundraising to try and raise the funds to try and cover the cost of your animation. So the other consideration that we had was standing out. How do you stand out in a saturated environment? There are many NGOs out there advocating digitally. So how can we get the attention of our target group? So for us, what we did was we have a relatively long campaign. The campaign was initially 9 months, but we're still going strong after 12 months. And this gave us enough time to reach the public and for the public to digest the information and to understand it. We also tried to give the campaign a strong identity. So the campaign has a logo, we have a website, so it lives somewhere, so people know where to go to find more information. We have a jingle that's very catchy. We also tried to develop a tone for the campaign, so it's informative, but we're also using humor and fun. So we're using these kind of things to really try and stand out. Like Tammy said, our message we feel is very simple. You're sweet enough. You don't need to consume too much sweets stuff. Drink water instead. So our campaign message is we feel is quite simple. At the basic level, it's simply drink some water, share some love. We've tried to localize our material as well, but also still appeal to a wider audience. So that kind of then makes it a little bit unique because, you know, it has a certain type of flavor to it because it has been localized. So it appeals to a local audience, but it also appeals to a regional audience as well. So we're doing all of these types of things to see how we could stand out in a saturated environment. Also, what we did was we tried to use a variety of different types of animation. So 3D, 2D, combining 2D with real life, and all of those types of things add variety and interest, and hopefully has helped us stand out a little bit. And then we also tried to saturate the media. So because we had the funding, what we were able to do was our animations were aired during the news almost every day for 9 months. So we had a lot of publicity. We also used social media. And then we also did something which kind of just came out of nowhere, but we decided to enter one of our animations into the Health for All Film Festival, which is the World Health Organization's film festival. And that opened us up to a wider audience. So if you think about it, one of the animation actually just on Twitter alone through World Health Organization, we're able to reach about 30,000 people. So that also helped us in terms of reaching a wider audience and also standing out. So collaboration, I think, is very important. At least it was important for us when we were pulling together the animations. So the reason why it was important was that we were able to get some really good feedback and input from people like the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Education, which helped us shape some of the messaging around our animations. But also collaboration helped us in terms of sourcing good voice actors and voiceovers. And I can't tell you how important it was to have really good voice actors because they really brought the animation to life in terms of making it appealing, putting their own little slang and their own little sort of mannerisms into it that really, really helped. Also, collaboration was very important in terms of opportunities for us to play the animation in different settings. So for example, through a collaboration, Meet the Wilberts was played in a cinema in Nigeria, if you could believe it. And so that really shows the importance of collaboration in terms of helping us extend the message and the reach of our animation. So I think another thing that we soon realized was that we had to go beyond the animation. And what I mean by that, we had to go beyond just thinking of animation as a technique, but as the title of this webinar says, we had to think about animating the public health message. And what I mean by that is bringing the message to life. And Damien kind of went through this, and also Tammy. So it's about a really, I guess, strong storyline. I mean, we're not perfect, but I think it's really being a good storyteller. And as NGOs, we have a lot of compelling stories that we can tell, and animation is a really good method of telling those stories and bringing them to life. I think also emotions, Tammy mentioned this as well, also putting a lot of emotion into the animation. So whether that's a bit of sadness, a little bit of humor, a little bit of hope, that also goes a long way in terms of bringing that public health message to life. Music was also a very important part of our animations. I think music really sets the tone, again, brings that message to life, also helps to evoke that emotion that we're trying to get across. And I've already mentioned it, having really good voice actors or voiceovers to bring that message to life. And I think another thing that we felt was important as we were developing the campaign and developing the animations was to try and avoid preaching and scaring, but really trying just to provide information or just tell a story, so that would also bring the message to life as well. And just another aspect of going beyond the animation was just to realize that animation was just one part of the entire campaign. Yes, we have the animation, but we also have influencer videos. We have a jingle. We had a dance competition. We used billboards, flyers, press releases. We wrote to the government. We have developed policy briefs. We did some stakeholder engagement. We have a web series, panel discussions, webinars, a monthly radio show. So animation was just one part of a really big puzzle, and all of them together help to amplify our campaign message. And so that's just us to showcase, really, that's just us out there going beyond animation. So another important aspect for us was measuring the impact of our campaign or our animations. And really, we wanted to do that because we wanted to understand, was our campaign having the impact that we intended? And the way that we did that was that we measured impact through a public opinion survey. So through our survey, we found that over half of our surveyed population had seen our campaign. So we were very happy with that. And out of the people that actually saw our campaign, 79% of people who saw our campaign said it improved their knowledge of the link between SSB consumption and obesity and NCDs. And 78% of people who saw our campaign said our campaign influenced them to reduce their SSB consumption. So based on all of that, we conclude for us, animation has been an effective public health advocacy tool. And I think that is it from me. So thank you so much for your attention. Really appreciate your attention. So now basically it's just questions and answers time. So we have about 20 minutes left. So if anybody has any questions, any concerns, any comments that they would like to make, then feel free to ask away. So if you have any questions at all, I think I have now given everybody the right to unmute yourself. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask away. So any questions? Any comments? Great. Okay. So it doesn't look like we have any questions. Okay, thank you. Somebody's saying great session. You're very well. Thank you so much. So it doesn't look like we have any questions.
I would say one comment from me, Abby, was when you pointed out the voiceovers. Currently working on a project where that set us back so much. Because it's similar to the animation, but the opposite, where in the animation you figure, you know, I can get exactly what I envision. With the voiceover, you have something in mind, you know, an emotion you want, and it's like almost like you picking, like you have an audition, you know, like do you get it or do you don't get it? Do you not get it? And it's like you can have a good animation, but if you're like, they go so hand in hand. Like, is your voiceover bringing that animation to life as much as that animation is trying to bring the message to life? And so many pieces to connect and make sure it's as effective as possible. So all of that to kind of say that animation is great, but like Damien had mentioned, it does come with those legs and layers of complexity that you really need to pay attention to. And you pointed out being collaborative and getting different opinions, etc. I think that's so important. One thing I will also mention is paying attention to your funders' requirements, right? Like any clause that they may have, which can kind of be limiting, and okay, are you going to be able to do this when you're in the Caribbean setting where you have a limited pool of resources, for lack of better words? You know, everyone is kind of doing the same thing. So you also want to pay attention to that across the board as you kind of, you know, select your agencies and your talents, etc. So again, a lot of complexity, even in something animated where you think it's just someone like Damien sitting behind a screen, and sometimes they tell you, okay, well, can they have this done in 3 days? And it's like, I mean, I don't do the animation, but I can only imagine that this is not going to take 3 days. They get a timeline of, you know, a week, and it's like, what do you mean a week? They just need to like put these things together, like and add the voices after. And it's like that communication that like we all literally have a way in which we need to work to make it happen. I think it's beautiful and at the same time very frustrating.
Yes, I can attest to that. There's so much back and forth to get it right. And I think people don't realize the amount of work that probably goes into creating an animation. So, okay, we have a couple of questions. I think the first one is probably going to be for Damien. So Damien, what skills or expertise should we look for to choose a good animator? I think that's a good question. You're on mute, Damien.
Right. So I'm going to do what I hate when people do to me, where they don't give a clear answer. I'm like, just yes or no, or clear answer or a number. Okay, so to find a good animator is just like you go through the same process that you would if you're looking for someone to work for you. And the truth of the matter is you have no idea what you're going to get until you get it. So that's the unfortunate truth about it, because for us, the impact isn't just the output, but the process as well, in terms of the process being smooth for the client as well. That's a huge part of it. So it's risk versus reward, essentially. So, like, rich persons, they have the money, so they condense time and stress. So if they're looking to travel, they literally go on a website, see the hotel that they're looking to think, they look at it, book it, and they're going clear, because they're just don't want any stress. For persons who aren't, doesn't have as much money, we have to spend hours on end looking and comparing and like, okay, this hotel isn't great, but I guess I can put that aside. So the same principle will have to go to in terms of your budget. So considering the value of the animation to you in terms of putting a price to it, and then I would say start the process by referrals. Essentially, I don't believe that we have to make mistakes. We can learn from other people's mistakes. Like, go out there and make all the mistakes other people and let me learn from your mistakes. So you're able to then condense what could be 3 months of a bad experience into you actually not having to have that experience. So referrals, talking to persons in the same space as you that have worked with others. And the most simple thing is obviously to see the work, and then make a judgment with all those things factor in. Also have a conversation with them, not just based off of the actual work, but kind of feel a vibe for the person, because you're going to work with them. So you want to make sure that they're enjoyable to work with. Because as I said, to me, collaboration can't just be about the end product. It has to be about the process as well, and that process being smooth and enjoyable. So referrals, so talk to persons that look at their work, have a brief touch-based meeting, which could be 5 minutes. You can learn a lot about in 5 minutes, and just ask them about one animation. Okay, so this specific animation, you can grill them about that specific animation. So what was the purpose? What were you trying to achieve? And then you can see, I think, that was good. Okay. And then make a decision from there, and the budget, of course, but yeah.
Tammy, any advice on finding a good animator from your?
I think Damien summed it up perfectly, because we actually have used an animator that we probably might not use again for that very reason. Like, there is it's like, you think it's not stressful, but it can actually be very stressful. And you need someone that understands that it gets stressful, someone who's going to be as flexible as you are. It's a lot of moving parts. And so I would definitely say, in addition to expertise, that those soft skills, and just being able to work with that person, you laugh, you say, we're not getting it. We wrong, we way off. Let's bring it back home. And it's that ability, and especially now in the virtual space, that ability to be able to have that rapport, even virtually, like have those conversations, make sure you get it and you get it right. So I 100% agree that it's about, one, looking at their portfolio, seeing the different animation styles that they are able to offer, etc. Referrals, highly recommend. You want someone that someone else has worked with and liked like the experience. So at least at minimum, that person is reliable, they know what they're doing, etc. If you now do catch a vibe with them, that's one thing, but at least the basics, you don't have to go through the stress of repeating that mistake. Okay, can they deliver on timelines? Can they do it within the budget we agreed on, etc. So I think those conversations are super important. It's like an interview process, because those people, when you hold on to them, you hold on to them until the very end.
Yep.
Oh yeah, definitely. Wonderful. And then another question, I think also for Damien, is what is the price range for animation, so that they can use it for budgeting and expectations? What is the price range?
So the price range would be, That's always a difficult question without details. And I know that you don't have details to give because it's a hypothetical question. So let me say this. The reason why I try, and it's hard to get clients to start with the budget. And I know why, I understand why, because as I said, when I deal with service providers, you kind of think that, okay, you just want to know my budget so that you could get all my money, even if your thing would be cheaper. I want to you know. However, for us, as I tell persons, especially like if we're doing a video project, that if your budget says, okay, this is the value of it to you, and it communicates directly to me what the resources that I can put on the project and how in-depth it can be. So you can do an animation and just have music. You can do an animation and have sound effects where every single step, so it's a lot more immersive. Every single step someone takes is a sound effect for that. So you build up the soundscape. That takes a lot of time as well. The level of shading and stuff that you get into can take up a lot of time as well. The style of animation, there's certain styles that are easier to do than others. And then also even, is it 2D animation? Is it 3D animation? So to me, the quickest route is usually, okay, this is the budget range. And they usually would present something that's at the lower end of the budget range, and then one that hits the higher end of the budget range. And that way, it makes it a lot easier to not feel it again. Yeah, I joke out just because then you can look at it and say, okay, well, this thing that you got in the higher budget range, I don't really need that. So then it's something to a basis to go off of, because there are a lot of factors. So you can get an animation done, a short animation done for 2,000 US or up to unlimited. But if you come to me and you say you have $1 million to do an animation, I would turn the job down, because I don't know how to maximize your value for $1 million. You know, because there are limitations to our market in the Caribbean. We don't have 300 million people like the US. So the industry is not as advanced here in the region. It's getting there. It's definitely improved a lot. So the budget is important, because then it allows not only your budget limitations, but as I said, I don't know how to maximize value for 30 seconds for $1 million animation, but there are persons who can, who would be able, because the persons that they're going to put on the project are expensive. The details, the time that they're going to spend on it. So that for that, they can give you probably, what's a popular animated movie? I don't know, something. Yeah. So long story short, I would say start with with that as a marker, but just let the person know what budget you're working with, and it makes it a lot easier for them to just deal with things within that scope.
Great, thank you so much, Damien. And then another question is, could you have a specific animators that you can recommend in the region? So specific animators that you can recommend.
Damien and Tammy's team.
Myself, Damien, I need to add you to our pool. And I think this is actually something that, you know, we should consider doing, like, because again, sometimes, you know, sometimes we think of it like there might not be enough to go around, but there very well might be. You know, you might use one person for one project for a little different flavor, another person for. So I think it's really important for us to get a pool, you know, of people that we use and we rely on, because also I will point out that what I've noticed, and also working again with animators who are very short, not many, is that it's difficult for them to get it. In the public health message, like you guys said, it's not a service we're trying to sell, it's not a product, etc. So trying to get someone to change their behavior, to undo decades of thinking, that is something that I just don't think we've mastered. Like, and that's globally. We are consistently trying to get there. And also we need to keep up with the trends. You know, the service providers, the very people we competing with, keeping up a lot faster than we can. We have a lot more limitations, you know, how we want to say something, how we might come across. Will we be jeopardizing the integrity or credibility of our organization? So even that in itself, and finding people who get it. It's almost like expertise within itself of being able to communicate that kind of messaging. The more you look at it, the more you realize you reflect. I think that's also very important. Reflecting, as Abby said, did we make it? Did we reach the target? Did we reach the goal? Like, what did people seem to like? What did they not seem to like? And trying to consistently tap into that. That is a level of expertise that I have not mastered yet, but I will say collaborating with, not just the health professionals, the marketing personnel, the creative agencies, the everyday man, like that is how you kind of get that going. Like really and truly the audience analysis components, conversations, structured target groups, that kind of thing, that is really, really, really important in this kind of work, honestly.
Excellent. Preach, girl, preach. Yeah, definitely. Damien, do you want to say anything about specific animators, or we just say that we all use Damien?
No, you see, so my situation is similar to Tammy. I mean, I have a team. So what she was saying as well is really, really important. I think persons don't understand is that you can hire an animator and pay them a lot of money, but it doesn't translate to whatever you need it to translate to. So there's always, the important thing is to always have, I know I don't like dealing with middle people. I really don't. However, with animation, it's different. You need someone who's focusing on how the message is packaged. So the client give they say what it is that they need. You need that interpreter that's speaking the language of the animator and speaking the client language, because most animators don't speak client language. Most clients don't speak animator language. So we're the translators that coming in and making and just pulling those two things together. Because, I've seen it where the animators who are super talented, and I see projects that they would have worked on by themselves. And it's like, this looks amazing, but I don't feel moved to do anything. And so in my opinion, that's a waste of the client's money. Because it's just a pretty video. What it does, it makes the animator have a nice visual thing for their portfolio, but the goal of what the whole thing was supposed to achieve, it doesn't, it falls flat. So there are talented animators. There's Begho Studios. There's Nicholas, who works for me full time. There are a number of good talented animators, but there are not a lot of talented translators. So I think finding the right translator, because the truth is that if once you have, there are many talented animators, as I said, but if Tammy's the translator or I'm the translator or the other translators between there, they can maximize that talent to be effective. So it's not just a pretty video, but it's a effective video. So I would say the key is not finding the animator, the key is finding the good translator, that person that can make your life easy. You tell them bam, 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 and then let us stress with the animator. And like, oh my gosh, why? Like, what is this? So yeah, pay us to take the stress away from you, or pay another translator to take the stress away from you. That's simply it. That's really it. So that you guys can focus on your core work, essentially. So that's it in a nutshell.
I love that. I think that idea of finding a translator is actually, I think that is perfect. So for us, as I was saying in my presentation, we were very lucky. We have an in-house person who is the translator, the animator, the graphic designer. He has a very, very unique experience. And I don't think you find that in any animators. He gets it. He used to be a teacher, so completely gets it. And it's very, very hard to find that in an animator. Like you said, they'll produce something that's very pretty, but they may not necessarily produce something that has the impact that you want. So I think that is the key word. You need a translator between public health and animation. You need a person in the middle that gets it. So, and I guess that's where both of you kind of sit, and it's a very useful technique to have.
Indeed.
I like the use of translator. I've called it being the middleman, which no one likes the middleman, you're right. But it's true, like the translates, that middle person ends up getting, like, you get the stress of the client, you get the stress of the creative agency. Like the creative agency is like, what are you doing? Like you have to, like y'all want to do too much. Like, and so you now need to take a step back and kind of process, you know, okay, reality is what are we trying to achieve? So I think you phrased it perfectly, and especially for, you know, bigger NGOs, CSOs, you know, when they're doing these collaborative endeavors, like it's super important to have that person who takes the time to understand the different pieces, not just from the animator side, like you said, the marketing side, the creative side, like the client side. It's a lot that goes into it, and I will say I think I underestimated it. Even from the dissemination side, like Lord have mercy, the programmatic and the this, and it's so much language that you need to kind of become familiar with in order to say, I think this is what we need moving forward. So I think you're right on it, Damien.
Good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely, Damien. That was the perfect word, translator. Definitely, definitely. And like Tammy was saying, I think there's so much more to animation. And I think sometimes people think it's so simple. You're just like, yeah, just animate, move that leg there, move that there. But there's so much more to it. You're trying to tell a story. It's advocacy. So you're trying to create action and motivate people to take action. So I think, yeah, as well, we sometimes do underestimate all the work that needs to go and the thought and the planning that needs to go into creating that animation. So I know Daniel had a question. I don't know, Daniel, do you still want to ask a question? I think, was it about the lessons learned and tips? Do you still want to ask us that question? Or do you think we've covered everything that you wanted in terms of tips? Covered, okay. Okay, great. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. So I think that's it. We've come to the end of our time, but I don't know if Tammy, Damien, if you have any parting last words of wisdom that you want to share with folks, and then we will wrap up. Tammy first? Or, yeah.
I think that sometimes we underestimate the talent that we have in the Caribbean. And honestly, working in this sphere, I've gotten to know so many great people and continue to get to know so many great people. Like we have so much excellence in the Caribbean. And so the world is really our oyster. I think, you know, make the calculated risks in an effort to get the message out there. It's totally worth it. It might not always work, but as long as, again, you have that basis of, you know, why you're trying to do something, I think you can always cover that. If something doesn't work, it's about trial and error, right? Again, service providers, what we're trying to combat, they did a lot of strategy, and so we're trying to catch up with that strategy, and we won't get it right all the time. We cannot always base things on, you know, the European or the US, those models, because we have a unique setting in the Caribbean. So fear not, you know, take the initiative, start small, and again, trial and error. Like it's not the end of the world if we don't get it right, especially if we're in it for the long haul.
So Damien, any parting words of wisdom that you can leave us with?
Parting words of wisdom, just keep doing the great work that you guys are doing. I mean, you know, everybody that it changes may not say it, or they may not even have noticed that it was as a result of the thing that they saw that one time that just hit the nail on the head, and they made a change in their life. But just yeah, the work that you guys are doing are changing people's lives, and I think that that's way more important than going back to what we were saying earlier about converting a sale. You're literally converting a life, you're saving lives, and by saving a life, the impacts that can have can be generational. So I think that as parting, continue doing what the great work that you guys are doing, and we're just here to kind of supplement and augment that work essentially. So you're the real stars.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I think my parting message would be just to add to everything that everyone has said, is the importance of things like music in terms of enhancing the message, because music can set the tone of your animation, and also having really good voiceover artists. So I can give an example. So the Meet the Wilberts, we thought it was okay. Like we were going through and we were like, oh, this is okay. But the minute the person came in with the voiceover, for us anyway, it just blew us away, because her voice was just really kind of expressive, and she was animated. So I think that it also considering things like music and also the person that you use to do any voiceovers or voice acting is important. I mean, for our animation Real Talk Bar, we loved those two voice actors because they were so natural. Like you could see those two guys probably chilling in the bar together. They were so natural. So I think it really does make a difference, I think, to be quite selective about your voiceover and your music as well. So I think those would be like just additional things to add. So with all of that being said, I would just like to say a big thank you to Damien. Thank you so much for all your insight. Excellent, very practical tips around animation. Thank you so much to Tammy for sharing her experience and all her insight. Very useful. And thank you everybody for coming. Also like to thank the Healthy Caribbean Coalition, because they connected me with Tammy and Damien. So appreciate that very much. Always very supportive. So thank you, Healthy Caribbean Coalition. So that's Sheena and Danielle. So thank you so much. And thank you everybody who attended. So I think it was a small group but mighty. So thank you so much for coming as well. And so what we'll do is we have recorded the session. So we'll share the recording with you so that you can refer back, because I think a lot of great information was shared. So thank you everyone. We really appreciate you coming.